So today what we're going to look at is the reaction of metals with acids. So it's going to be quite similar to the reaction of bases with acids, but there's only one general equation this time. And in the general equation we have an acid reacting with a metal. Now, just like before, we get two products. One of those products is a salt. But the other product this time is hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is H2, remember it's diatomic, and it's a gas, which means that you will see bubbles during the reaction. You will definitely see bubbles. Now, why do we get hydrogen and not water? Well, that's to do with the ions that are present in solution. The acid, as usual, provides us with H+ ions, hydrogen ions. The metal, well, metals don't give us ions whenever they are elements. So there's no ions from that. Salt will be produced, and if we've only got this, there's nothing containing oxygen on the left-hand side, so we can't have anything containing oxygen being produced on the right-hand side. So that leaves us with just hydrogens, and the only molecule they can make is H2, which is why we get that. We also need to make sure that we know how to name the salt. And the rules are very similar to what we had before. So similar rules to whenever we were working with acids and bases. Now with this, the salt, as always, name has two parts. Now part 1 is going to be the name of whatever metal is reacting, and then part 2 comes from the acid. So, for example, hydrochloric acid, then we have nitric acid, and we have sulfuric acid. If we had hydrochloric acid, we've got this chloric part, and that gives us chlorides. Chloric, chloride. Next one is nitric acid. Now, nitric acid, from the nitric part, we end up with nitrate, just like before. And then sulfuric acid, well, sulfuric acid, we've got this sulfuric part, and that produces sulfates. So it's a bit easier actually than before. So if we have an example of a situation, we've got magnesium reacting with, let's go for sulfuric acid. We are going to get a salt. Now, we know that the first part of the salt comes from the metal, and we have magnesium. And then we have got sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid, we know sulfuric acid, the part that goes into the salt's name is sulfate. So it is magnesium sulfate. However, remembering our general equation, metal plus acid goes to salt plus hydrogen. we need to remember hydrogen. Now, unfortunately, the situation is a bit more difficult because not all metals will react with acids. And you need to be able to identify which ones do. And for that, you're going to use the data booklet. And it's the back page, which is page 10. And it looks like this. I know that's a bit small, but you don't need to worry about this part at all. We're just looking at this list of elements. And if you look very closely, hydrogen is here in the middle. Hydrogen's there. And there's a lot of metals above, and then there are 4 metals below. And the rule is, if the metal is above hydrogen, it will react. If the metal is below hydrogen, it will not react. So that's quite easy. If it's above, it will react. If it's below, it will not. So our rule is, if metal is above hydrogen, it will react. And then if it is below hydrogen, it won't react. So above will react and below won't react. There are only 4 elements for metals that will not react, and they are copper, which is Cu, then silver, which is Ag, mercury, which is Hg, and gold, which is Au. So those are the 4 metals below hydrogen, and they won't react. There's one final thing we need to do for this part of the course, and that is we need to work out how do we prove that whenever we do this reaction, the gas that we get is hydrogen. And we need to know a test for hydrogen gas. Oh. Well, to do this, we start off just with a normal test tube. And in it, we put our metal plus our acid. Now, if this is the metal that is above hydrogen on page 10 of the data booklet, we will start to see little bubbles of gas being produced. We can capture that gas in quite an easy way, and that's just to put a slightly bigger tube on top and hold it above. And what should happen is that the gas collects in that tube. And as long as you keep that tube upside down like that, the gas won't escape, because if it's hydrogen, hydrogen rises to the top and it doesn't like going back down again, so it'll collect right up here. Now if you keep that test tube upside down like that, you should still have some hydrogen in here. And what you do is you take a splint, that's just a piece of wood that you set alight, and you have to make sure that it's lit. So it can't just be a glowing splint, it has to be one that's on fire. And you hold it up here, so that is a lit splint. And if there is hydrogen in there, you will hear something. You will hear a squeaky pop. And it's a really distinct sound. It's kind of like, you know, if you put your finger in your cheek and then like push your finger forward, that sort of noise, that's noise. That's the sort of noise you would expect if hydrogen is present. So what we do, we mix our metal and our acid together. We see bubbles being produced. We hold a tube over. You might need to hold it over for a few minutes just to let the gas collect, maybe 1 minute or 2. Then keep this upside down, hold it like that, and light a splint, hold it at the bottom, and you should hear a squeaky pop. Sometimes you'll hear the pop and actually the force of the reaction will blow the splint out and it might start to smoke, but it's just that noise that you're looking for. So to review everything, we started off looking at the general equation. Acid plus metal goes to a salt plus hydrogen. And the reason we get hydrogen is because the only ions we start with are hydrogen ions, and so we can only have hydrogen in our gas. We then looked at how to name the salt, and the rules are very similar to what we had before when we were reacting acids with bases. First part is just the name of the metal that's reacting. For example, in this one it's magnesium. And then for the second part, we look at the type of acid, and we remember that chlorine, hydrochloric acid, produces chlorides, nitric acid produces nitrates, and sulfuric acid produces sulfates. So here we had magnesium and sulfuric acid, so it was magnesium sulfate. We then learnt that not all metals are capable of reacting, and that you look up data booklet page 10, and there's a list of metals with hydrogen put in the middle, and any metal above hydrogen will react. Any metal below hydrogen will not react. We finished with looking at how to test that hydrogen gas is being produced. Now what you do is you mix your metal and your acid together in a test tube. It starts to bubble if it's a reactive metal, and you collect the gas in a test tube you just hold above. Keeping that tube upside down, you take a lit splint, it needs to be on fire, hold it there, and you hear a squeaky pop, and that tells you that that gas is hydrogen. So that was metals reacting with acids. Thank you for your attention.